responsive to you. Feedback, so let me make sure all the audios are working correctly. Okay, that should have gotten it. Be sure to chat with me if you're not hearing this well. So it's a 5-year strategy, and we've been about learning what you need to scale up your pathways work, but also raising funds so that it costs your colleges little to nothing to be able to participate. So this is the first year, 17-18, and some of the things that we've been doing just to set the context. So the November and the April events, the institutes are sort of the anchors to our work. And so this year, the topics that we're talking about, even though it's a comprehensive package of doing guided pathways in Texas, these two institutes are the anchors to what we're going to be talking about this year. And so in the November Institute, we talked about transfer and employment, and this one in April will be about front door success. And so that in with I apologize, I keep stopping because I'm getting audio feedback. Let me see if I can figure out how to make that stop. Okay, my apologies. So all of that fits within our 5-year strategy around this model. So every time we meet, I'll show you this model again, and we're going to continue to work off of this for the 5 years. And so as you see, the two bookends, the 4-year industry partners and the K-12 partners, are the two topics for this year. We've already covered the beginning with the end in mind in November, and now in April, we're moving more towards the connect. And so in this institute, we're going to be covering several topics. We're going to be talking about our relationships with our K-12 system, including how we're aligning our maps and our meta majors with endorsements, as well as thinking about what's the right dual credit courses that we want to have in those maps, and to recommend to our ISDs that they help students choose the right dual credit courses. But we're also going to talk about students at different kinds of entry levels, so adults who are entering our community colleges, talking about the relationships we have with those partners and how we can strengthen the alignment between adult education programs and with our meta majors and our mapping of our programs. And then the third set of students or on-ramps we're going to talk about is dual credit. So we've already started these conversations around the state even this month as we're having our co-requisite regional meetings. So some of you have already been at some co-rec regional meetings, and some of you will have them before the month's over. So it's all part of this work leading up to the April event. And so I want to talk to you about the event, about the agenda, and then the advanced work. So this Institute number 4, Front Door Academic Success, as I said, will be April 16 to 18. You should have already received an email, all Pathways leads, that had registration information about team building and who should be on the team. But we'll reiterate here that, again, the center has raised grant funds that will cover teams of up to 7, and that will cover your registration. It will cover Monday and Tuesday night stay at the hotel and the event meals. And so just as a heads up, Monday and Tuesday night in the spring events are dinners on your own that the institutions will pick up. And each institution will pay for travel to get your team there. We do have space available. We've rented extra space. I know that that has been helpful to a lot of colleges that want to bring additional team members. And I've heard from several of you already that you're going to bring larger teams, and that is perfectly fine. Just as a heads up on that the registration will be $250 per person for that registration to cover those costs. And as we look at the cost of these events, we're reevaluating how much we may need to charge for registration. And so as we look forward to the November event next year, at the end of this calendar year, registration may go up as much as to $400, which would better cover the cost of the institute. So let's look at the agenda then. The team members who will come. So always the Pathways leads and the CEOs. We'd like for you to be the linchpins to your team, of always being the ones who are being the big champions and making sure everyone's informed. So please plan on the CEO and the Pathways lead always coming. We are again this year having the Aspen Institute, where we will do an Aspen Leadership Roundtable on the middle day. So for us, that would be Tuesday, April 17th, and it will be from noon to 3, where all the CEOs will have their own breakout session with Josh Weiner to talk about leadership and what it takes to lead a Guided Pathways institutional change. So the additional team members that you'll bring will rotate. So for this one, since we're talking about the front door, we've asked you to invite people who are primarily responsible for the topics we'll be covering, like dual credit, adult education and literacy. So with that one, I know that changes institution by institution. Some of you are the primary deliverer for adult education, and many of you partner with those in your community who are delivering adult education. So I'm going to leave that that invitation up to you, whoever you think would be most useful to your team, but someone who is a high-ranking personnel for your adult education would be great to bring into the conversation. And as a sidebar, we just recently found out from TWC that if you are inviting someone from an adult ed and literacy program that is receiving funds from TWC, then you may also use those funds in order to pay for your teams to come to the event and to pay for registration. So that was all in the email that came to you as well. So we'd also like for you to bring people who are primarily responsible for your high school partnerships. So someone who is working with your K-12 system about endorsements and aligning to your pathways, and someone who knows a lot about your dual credit. And then lastly, so developmental ed folks. So particularly if these are decision makers around curriculum, it'd be great for you to bring deans or department chairs or faculty leads. And now for the agenda. So just like all of the institutes, we will begin with an opportunity for pre-institute sessions. The Dana Center Math Pathways will be a staple. We'll always have opportunity to come and talk about your math pathways at all of the institutes. We have a couple of others we're offering this time. If you want to come in early, then there's also going to be one on adult and developmental education. So we've asked folks from the coordinating board and from TWC to be with us to spend some time talking with your folks about that. And then also Kay McClinney has agreed to do a Pathways 101 pre-institute session. So we're particularly thinking about if you're bringing some folks to this institute who have not come to institutes before, and you want to sort of ramp them up and get them up to speed on all the things we've talked about in the previous institutes, then this would be a great one to invite them to. Then the institute itself will start on Monday the 16th, and it follows the same rhythm or pattern that we do with all of our institutes. So you know that the whole 3 days is really geared around orchestrating conversations from your advanced work, from your regional meeting, through all your team strategy times, but all of those are really aiming at what's going to happen in the very last team strategy time on the third day. And so we will start at 2 o'clock. We'll have our first strategy time where you'll be all cadres will be working on your short-term action plans. That will differ cadre to cadre, but all of you will have opportunity to do that. And on that very first night, we're going to have a reception and then dinner on your own, so you can be with your teams that evening. And then on the second day, we'll start in the morning at 9 o'clock. Breakfast will be available anytime between 7 and 9, but then the plenary itself will start at 9 o'clock. You'll have your 2 strategy times and 2 concurrent times during the day, and then dinner on your own. And then on the third day, as we have in the past, we will offer breakfast from 7 to 9. We'll have an opening plenary, but then your team will have good time together to finish up your beginnings of your short-term action plan, and then we will be finished by noon on that third day. So I want to talk about the advanced work that you are going to be doing between now and then. So if you have a computer in front of you, I'm going to go out to our TACC website and go through the resources as you see them on the web so that you could use that to refer back to and get back to your advanced work. So if you would, go to the TACC website, and then we're going to go to the Texas Success Center and to resources. And so for me, this is what it looks like. If you go to the Texas Association of Community Colleges And then right in the center is Texas Success Center, and you scroll down to resources. When you click there, this is where you're going to find resources really to all of the services that we're offering. And so it begins with a resource library. There's information about the regional meetings, the institutes, and also the Board of Trustees institutes. And so it begins like that, regional meetings. So if you want to catch up on what's happening in the regional meetings on CoREX right now, that's in this first section. But then I'm going to scroll down to where it talks about the institutes. And so for this page, you'll have resources about all of the institutes that we've had so far. If you want to see the digital notebooks or the PowerPoint presentations, they're all listed there. And then at the top where you see each cadre, this is where your advanced work will be. And so I'm going to click, so for you, click on the cadre that you belong to. I'm going to click on Cadre 4 for starters. So when you get to your cadre webpage, then if you'll scroll down to Institute 4, Front Door Academic Success, this is where we'll start. So for each one of you, you'll have a list of your advanced work here with an overview and worksheets for each piece of the advanced work. So I'm going to click on the overview for Cadre 4 for beginners. So for all 4 cadres, you will all be doing co-requisite visioning worksheet, key performance indicators, and an engagement scan. So this first overview sheet is just that. We'll have a short description of what each one of these pieces are, and also work as a sort of a reference sheet so you know that you've completed all pieces of the advanced work for your cadre. So I'm going to go back to and start with the co-requisite visioning worksheet. So all cadres will do this. This worksheet was provided at the regional meeting. Some of you haven't seen it just yet, but when you get to your regional meeting, you will be doing this worksheet together. The worksheet begins with a quick purpose statement of this is really about helping you do some pre-planning thinking as you prep to come to the Institute. So at the Institute, you will have your short-term action plan that will walk you through exactly what and when and who needs to be involved in your next steps around wherever you are with your co-rec work. But this is really to prep you for that. And so I'm thinking that for every cadre, you will bring together your developmental educators, hopefully at the regional meetings. So far, they've been really good meetings. You'll bring them there and you'll do some pre-visioning work together. This worksheet has 2 sections. At the bottom of the first page, it has a set of resources that can help you with this, but it's broken into 2 sections. It has the first section where you're identifying your capacities and potential challenges, noting some things that you have already been really great at and things that you still have issues with in some important categories for being able to scale a co-requisite model. And in the second portion, it helps walk you through some important topics to consider, lay out the groundwork for what you already know about those things, and some questions that you still need to ask. And so we ask that you fill out this visioning worksheet, and then you'll turn it in with all of the advanced work. You'll turn into the center by March 30th, but you'll also bring it to the Institute so that when you start your conversations at your strategy team times, you're not starting from scratch, but you're starting with your advanced work. So that's the co-rec visioning worksheet. Next is key performance indicators. So these key performance indicators are also a requirement for all 4 cadres. So even if you're in your cadre page and you pull up this, you'll all get the same document. We're all collecting the same key performance indicators. And we're going to be doing this each spring. So these are a standard set of data indicators that are aligned with our model. And so there are a small number of indicators for each of the pieces of the model. So you see that when I scroll down the definitions, these indicators are about how students connect, how they enter, how they progress, and succeed in our institutions. And so I want to just walk through each one of these and make sure you understand what kind of data that we're asking for. This first tab says KPI instructions and definitions. So this is where I'm sure your IR department will appreciate some definitions about the kinds of data that we're asking for. So for each one of them is a description. So for example, in this first one, connect. This is really just getting a picture of what your first time in college cohort looks like. And so it has a description there of the kinds of students who will be included in the numerator and in the denominator to get this. And so for this Connect data, you'll go out to the Connect tab on the spreadsheet. And when you click there, you'll see that there'll be a spreadsheet, a table for you to fill out. One thing we're doing different with the KPIs this year is that we are including some disaggregated data for each one of the indicators. And so when you get your enrollment data, you'll fill it in for 2013, 14, 15, and 16, your first time in college cohort, both the number of students and the percentage. So this, of course, will be 100% in this first row. And then you'll disaggregate that by underprepared and prepared. And so when you add these two up, these will also equal 100%, and so forth with gender, race and ethnicity, and whether or not they took dual credit or not before they became college students. And so for each one of these, Connect, Enter, Progress, and Succeed, you'll use the tabs at the bottom, and you will have your data indicator. So for Enter, we're going to be looking at students in their first term and whether they completed 6 or more hours, whether they completed their first college level math course, whether they completed their first college English course, and then lastly, both English and math in the first year. In Progress, we're going to be looking at whether they persist from term to term, so that's fall to spring, whether they earn 15 credit hours, whether they earn 30 credit hours, and whether they're completing courses that they are enrolled in on the 12th day. And so you can also see how these longitudinal cohort indicators are also very closely aligned with our student success points. And then in Succeed, we're going to be looking at students who transferred to a university with 15 credit hours within 3 years, whether they earned a certificate or a degree in 3 years, and whether they earned a certificate or an associate's degree in 6 years. This last two indicators on the Succeed tab, I want to spend a little more time on. One piece of data that has been really instrumental in Texas for helping our Pathways conversations is around the time and credits to a degree. And so if you go back out to your instructions page, there's a link to the coordinating board where you can go to the almanac. So we're not really even asking you to go out and run new data on this. If you just pick up the data that's out in the almanac and put it in the spreadsheet, and do so for students who were in cohorts of beginning in 2014, 2015, and 2016 that you'll find in the almanac that was published in 15, 16, and 17. So when you go to the coordinating board, you'll click on Almanac 2015, 2016, and 2017. And I'll show you real quickly what that looks like and where you'll go. So when you go to the coordinating board website and you type in Almanac, it'll bring, or you click on the link that was on the spreadsheet, it'll bring you to the Almanac page. And when you scroll down, if you haven't already been here, you'll see that all the back almanacs are listed at the bottom. When you click on the Almanac, then it'll pull up, and for it whichever one you're using, I'll see if it can pull it up here. For every single one of them, you'll find the data on page 25. So if you scroll down to page 25, you'll find these completion measures right at the beginning of this spreadsheet, and it has average time to degree and average semester credit to degree. And so for every community college, you have it listed there. I'll just note that if you're serving in an institution that's a multi-college district, then in some of the spreadsheets, they list all of them here. You can see Dallas has each one of your colleges listed, but in subsequent almanacs, they only had the district level data on this page and referred you to a further page in the back of the almanac. So that's fine as long as you have your district data on your spreadsheet, or if it's useful to your teams to have every college, to just expand the spreadsheet that you're reporting your KPIs on. So the last KPI I want to show you on the Succeed tab is this employment. So all the indicators that I'm going to talk about the KPIs from here on out are optional, but we want to start seeing what kind of data we might want to collect together and what might be useful to your Pathways conversations. So we added this one this year about employment. So if you're currently collecting employment data on your graduates, then I would ask you to please place them in this tab. So if you go out to Succeed, there's an optional employment place for you to put your data and whether it's disaggregated, and then just make a note where you got that data from. And we'll start looking and see if there's something meaningful that we'll have all the colleges begin collecting. The second set of data that's also optional, because I know we're at all different places in our adult education data. So you can see this long tab along the side of this KPI instructions and definitions. But really, if you just go out to the AEL tab, you'll see that it's basically just all of the same KPIs around Connect, Progress, Enter, Progress, and Succeed. But this is on the cohort that started as an adult education learner. So I'm not even sure that all of you have these kinds of data, especially if you're not serving, if you're not directly receiving funds from TWC to do adult ed. So this data may be different from you. So as you have it, so we'll put this in the optional category, as you have it, start to share it and also note here where you got the data from. If you are able to get this data together, I think it will really help inform your conversations at the Institute. So I'm going to stop for a sec because I see a question has popped up. Let me see if I can get it real quick. Can I please clarify who counts as an AEL student and what kinds of courses count? Great question. So just in all candor, we're kind of all over the board in Texas, right? Because some community colleges, because they don't have AEL necessarily, they don't have AEL funds coming to them, then really AEL students look more like developmental students, and I understand that. And so really I'm just asking that as you are already disaggregating the data, if you are, then share it with us and tell us what the resources are, where you got the data from, whether you're collecting it from a community entity that is delivering AEL, or whether these are just students that have a certain score, placement score on TSIA, but are really being served through your developmental education. Okay, so I'm going to go back then to, that finishes up the KPIs. If you have any other questions, please type them in and we'll get to them. But I'm going to go back to the advanced work. So this again is Cadre 4. We've seen the overview, we've seen the co-rec visioning worksheet, we've seen the KPIs. And so the third piece of advanced work for Cadre 4, which is also the identical advanced work for all the cadres, is this engagement scan. So we all know how important engagement is for this to really be institution-wide change. And so we have this Pathways engagement scan that we are asking you to complete. Again, we'd like for you to not do this in isolation, that this ideally would not just be your Pathways lead that would fill this out by themselves, but that you'd have folks who are in the know would help contribute to this. So this really just asks questions about your board of trustees. How are they engaged? Yes or no? Last year, and is it more this year? And then some notes for you to tell us a little bit more about that. It talks about your cabinet level administrators, about faculty, about AEL. It just goes through all different kinds of categories of folks and what number of them are engaged and the percentage of the total. So like the last question, how many developmental faculty are participating in Pathways activities? You'll give us the number you think were engaged last year, the number and percentage that are engaged this year. So that's your engagement scan. Do we have another question? Okay. Let me go back to that. For multi-college systems, do you have a preference for whether we report as a system or a district or by individual colleges, or is it up to the team? Bottom line, Anna, it is up to the team. What you think is most helpful to your, this is prep work for what you'll be doing in your team strategy time for the Institute. And I know, Anna, in particular, you've brought lots of folks that represent all the different colleges. So if that's helpful to you to have both the district data and the college level data, I would encourage you to bring what's going to work most for your team. This is really just support for you. Good question. Okay. So that takes us through all the advanced work that Cadre 4 is responsible for. So I'm going to go back and look at Cadre 3. So Cadre 3, you also have the exact same set. You have an overview, the co-rec visioning worksheet, the KPIs, and the engagement scan. Now, if you're in Cadre 3, where it will really be tailored to you will be in your short-term action plan. So we'll help you use the data that you've collected that's just like everyone else, but then help guide questions about the work that you're doing that's specific to your cadre. Now I'm going to click on Cadre 2. So Cadre 2, you have the same thing. You have an overview of the work you're doing. You have the co-rec visioning worksheet, the KPIs, and the engagement scan. But this endorsement and dual credit mapping is unique to both Cadre 2 and 1. So I'm going to go over it for your two cadres. So this is piggybacking on what you did in prep for the November Institute. If you recall Cadres 1 and 2, you did a mapping that was from your programs to your transfer institutions and employment. So this is just doing the other bookend. So we're looking at the other end of the spectrum and how you're connecting your program maps to your K-12 system, identifying endorsement to map your program maps or your meta majors, as well as your dual credit courses that you would recommend that the students take. And so this is your way of mapping back to your endorsements. So who should be filling this out? Again, I think that different things are happening on different campuses. So I'll tell you about the ideal and then we'll ratchet it back. So ideally, if you were in a place with your mapping process internally, the community college mapping, then you would begin conversations with your K-12 system, and you would sit down with groups of folks from K-12, whether it's administrators, probably curriculum managers, and teachers with the same set of counterpart from your community college, and you would begin to align and draw these maps together. Now, you may be at all different places, even internally, about what you're doing with mapping. And so, again, I offer this support for you to be where you need it to be. So minimally, for Cadre 2 colleges, I'd like to see you create, even if it's just internally, as a preparation for having conversations with your K-12 system, internally map at least one meta major and program back to at least one endorsement with the dual credit. And so here's how you'll use the worksheet. It has instructions here and it has some examples of some schools that have some cool examples of how they've done this kind of work. So you're welcome to go see what they've done. And then this is the worksheet. So again, minimally, type in at least one ISD to your college and do at least one mapping. So for this example, I've typed in STEM pathways, and it would start with the endorsement being the STEM endorsement in computer science and technology. And I just grabbed some courses. This isn't necessarily right, but dual credit courses, what meta major it leads to at your college, what certificates students could earn if they went through this track, if they defaulted into all of your good recommendations, what associate's degrees they would be prepared for, and then out here on the bachelor's degrees, what bachelor's degrees would that set them up for? And I realized that this might be super specific. So this would be a straight line from their high school, 8th graders choosing an endorsement, all the way through going to not just getting a computer and information technology degree, but getting it at UT, which would inform which dual credit courses were here. So again, I offer this up to be as helpful as you want to use it. I think there are some of you who will be able to fill out all of this and others that will choose a portion of it. So for Cadre 2, do at least one mapping of one program. For the Cadre, yes, that was Cadre 2, do at least one. And then for Cadre 1, we ask that you do all of them. So in prep for, it's really been a couple of institutes ago, you were already mapping all of your programs. So you should have all of your internal mapping done with your meta majors. And so now we're asking you to map back to at least one ISD, all of the endorsements that are there. So that's endorsement and dual credit mapping. And that's all of the advanced work for Cadre 2 and the same for Cadre 1. Overview, endorsements, co-recs, KPIs, and an engagement scan. There's one more thing I want to add to what we're all going to do, and that is, so this is for Cadre 1, all the advanced work, and you can see it's all the things we've covered, endorsements, co-recs, KPIs, and the engagement scan. But there's this additional piece that we're going to ask Cadre 1 colleges to do. If you recall, we've all filled out a scale of adoption assessment. And we're going to continue to use this as a recurring measure of how much we've been able to scale so far. And we'll do that across the 5 years to watch the scaling happen and to monitor it, to learn from it. And so for this preparation for this institute, we've asked Cadre 1 colleges to sign up for a telephone conversation, probably about an hour and a half, with researchers who are going to be calibrating the responses so that we'll be able to have standardized, like a standardized matrix across not only our state, but also standardized to the national research that's being done on the same scale of adoption. And so between now and Institute 4, we've asked the leads at least, or maybe small teams from all the Cadre 1 colleges to do these research calls. Now we're going to do these research calls with all the cadres eventually, but we're going to start with these 12 that we'll accomplish and have some report outs to you in the April Institute. All right, I think I've covered all of the advanced work, so I'm going to go back to the chat room and see if anyone has any more questions for me. So far not, so I'm going to still put up my last screen while I'm stalling to let you ask a question if you have one last one. Excuse me. And there we go. So we're going to have our Institute April 16th to 18th. I'm really looking forward to it. Seeing no questions, then I'm going to assume that you all have your charge. You know what you're going to do. And I look forward to seeing you soon. I'll see you at your regional meeting or then again at the April Institute in Houston. So thanks a lot, guys. Appreciate your time.